Hard, right? I think if Joe Biden was going to step down, he wouldn't be the nominee. Remember, 4 years ago, he was installed, right? He lost the first two primaries. Clyburn pushed him over the finish line in South Carolina, and then everybody quit the day before Super Tuesday, allowing him to become the nominee. And it's because he pulls the best out of any major Democrat in the swing states. And so if there was someone else that had a better chance to win, he wouldn't have been the nominee this cycle. He wouldn't have been the nominee last cycle.
But you bring up the issue of the campaign cash, because the only person that can access the cash is Kamala Harris.
Yes, look, this is the feature, not the bug. Like, all of these left-wing outlets, which include Politico, are taking their cues from the White House if they want access.
They were. I don't think anymore, but they were.
And this was obvious. If you watch Joe Biden on the circus the weekend of Donald Trump's first election in 2016, right before, and then you watch his campaign announcement video, and then you watched him campaign, you could see this is obvious. And for anyone to deny this happening, it's like, don't believe your lying eyes. So look, the Democrats never fight in public, and I just love watching it.
Well, if it wasn't a constitutional crisis, I might agree with you, but there's a lot of worries about who this man is that's in the White House right now. He came out and was talking about now it's called a blitz primary, but basically a mini primary is what Clyburn put out there. And he was being asked hypothetical. But when he answered that, what I thought was fascinating is it's obvious that they're gaming it out. And Rob Reiner and many in Hollywood now saying the quiet part out loud, Joe has to go. Reed Hastings, co-founder of Netflix, last week, Joe has to go. Damon Lindelof, Hollywood producer, Joe's got to go.
Normally, the Democrats have a much better plan than to air all this dirty laundry out in front of everybody, because this is a disaster. Like, whether Joe Biden is replaced or stays on the ticket, this is going to materially hurt every single Democrat running in November. And, honestly, I love to see it.
Yeah. Just one thing to add, with everything you named, add in the New York Times and the Washington Post and the media, who are now saying it's time.
Yeah,
openly.
Yeah, after they covered for him for so many months.
Years.
So we're going to talk about that's something that needs to be paid attention to, I think, by Republicans.
Sure. Donald Trump is easily the best Republican on this topic in saying that this should be, if you're super pro-life, I made this a possibility for you. But if you are pro-choice, I am putting action directly in your hands on a state level. So he nullifies, Donald Trump individually nullifies most of these pro-abortion arguments. And also what you need to remember about Kamala is she is a horrific retail politician. She has never won a competitive race. She is a master tactician behind the scenes, okay, and that led her to getting the Willie Brown Democratic machine behind her so she could become San Francisco DA. Same machine got her the endorsement to become California AG, and same machine got her the endorsement to become senator in California. And, they were behind her in the presidential primary in 2020. She dropped out of that race before a single vote was cast. Okay, she is awful in front of crowds. She is awful in man-to-man retail politician, because I don't know if she believes it's below her. It's not part of her skill set. I do not believe she is a stupid person. I think she is extremely smart. She is again, extremely good tactician, but it's just not going to play in rural Wisconsin. It is not going to play in the Rust Belt, for people who have been getting crushed by inflation. It is the white working class in the Rust Belt that is going to decide this election. They voted for George W. Bush. They voted for Obama. They switched their votes to Trump in 2016. Some of them switched back to Biden in 2020, and now they're moving to Trump in droves. Can Kamala Harris take that demographic and put it back in the Scranton Joe camp? I do not believe she can.
All right, let's pivot back to California Governor Gavin Newsom. So he's keeping his swing state tour going, and it played out more, I think, than anyone on the Republican side thought it was going to.
Yeah, well, look, again, a lot of those Republicans had very different views and arguments than Donald Trump on that, and they paid the price. And regardless of your personal feelings, the country is not an ardent pro-life country. Three-quarters, two-thirds of the country believes that all abortion should happen before the end of the second trimester. That's a bipartisan issue, and outside of that, it gets very murky. And so, if you campaign like Governor DeSantis, that 10 weeks or 15 weeks, or you're an absolutist, there's just not That's not a popular issue. And then in terms of Gavin Newsom, he does not want to run into the buzzsaw of Trump in this election. If you lose this election to Trump, it's going to be very hard for you to run again in 2028. So I think he's trying to be the good soldier to tee himself up for the next round.
All right, we're just getting started this morning. Coming up, big banks are taking hits from the commercial real estate space, despite the smaller banks handling the bulk of the lending. So this headline, a little surprising to me, but what is your outlook and your opinion of this, Mike?
Yeah, so this commercial real estate trouble is nothing new. We've been talking about this for years, obviously with nobody going back to work since COVID. What's surprising is the amount of losses the large banks have taken from commercial real estate, because most of the office real estate, most of the large commercial real estate, which these big banks get involved with, are through a syndicated loan process. So they write the loan and then they slice it and dice it and sell it out to investors. But there's still been a relatively large amount of losses, almost double in the top 100 banks as the smaller banks, which you wouldn't expect to see, because it is your local and community banks that are holding commercial office loans on their balance sheet. The loan loss reserves, though, however, for these top 100 banks is closer to an 8%, and so they've realized about 4% in losses. So there still is some cushion there. But what you need to look at with commercial real estate is these are enormously profitable loans for banks across the board. So if the defaults and bankruptcies and landlords giving back the keys, if that's spread out over time, these banks can withstand it. What these banks can't withstand is a lot of office buildings in a single market all going bust, all going bankrupt, or a lot of industrial or multifamily. If these things happen in quick succession, that will lead to another banking crisis a la SVB that we saw a little over a year ago. So I don't think any of that is on the radar. I think we're going to get a lot of look into the banking industry later this week when JP Morgan gives their results. Arguably the most significant financial institution in our time. They're going to give us a good look into the consumer, what they're seeing out there, typically a good measure. But these banks are still making a lot of money because they're getting paid over 5% on their excess reserves by the Federal Reserve. So this is something to watch. I do not share the fear that the Wall Street Journal is talking about here with commercial lending in these large banks. I do think that the fear of these losses from these banks has slowed down lending, it's slowed down capital, and you can still see problems in the mortgage market. So our 10-year Treasury, anywhere from 4.25 to 4.5, that should historically put your 30-year mortgage 175 basis points higher. So between a 6 and 6.5%, we're 100 to 200 basis points higher depending on the type of 30-year mortgage you're getting. So that to me shows there's still a significant amount of stress in this banking system, and that capital is not flowing freely. But look, quantitative tightening is coming to an end, and I believe quantitative easing is right around the corner from that. And I believe Powell's going to announce this week or lay the groundwork for a rate cut in September.
Sure.
So things tend to be looking in a better direction for the banks.
Okay. All right. Mike's going to stay with us. Jamie Cox, thank you for being here as always, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We've got a lot more coming up this morning. Primary, featuring 6 candidates who received the most votes from the party delegates. And then the 3 potential moderators, stand by for this, Taylor Swift, Oprah Winfrey, and Michelle Obama. Your face says it all. But anyway, your reaction.
Look, I too at one point believed in unicorns and fairy tales. But the real issue here, well, obviously the media, now the degree to which they are cheerleaders. They are not reporting, they are pushing an agenda, they are simply there to advance the narrative of the regime, whichever regime that they may think is, pushing their buttons at the moment. But the greater overreaching question, if this guy can't run to be president, how on earth is he the president right now? Right. How does he have the nuclear football? And who is actually making decisions? We've been saying this on this show for a couple of years. Who is actually in charge of this country? Is it Joe Biden? Is it Barack Obama? Because it's clearly not Joe Biden.
Or is it Jill Biden or Hunter Biden? The family, real quick, I do want to bring this up because this is something that Maria hit on yesterday. So New York Post columnist Miranda Devine joined her